a cold day in the woods. Got some more snow. We'll see how long I can go on this video with the heresy of Mary Magdalene. Mary's story is it's one of the most tragic stories when you see what's happened to the story of Mary Magdalene. But I'll do my best to try to give Mary a little more credit. So Mary Magdalene, if you don't know the backstory of Mary from the New Testament, she's one of the companions and one of the disciples of Jesus. She's not named as one of the 12. That would have been odd to name a female at that time a disciple or a student of a rabbi, but she was clearly one of the early companions during this 3.5-year ministry of Jesus. She was there for most of it. She would have heard a lot of teaching, a lot of the parables and the sermons. She would have been there, and then she would have had a lot of time on those walks and those moments that are not listed anywhere in the Bible. She would have had the ear of Jesus at that time. So we know a little bit about her background. You know, there's this story that she was oppressed or possessed by 7 demons, and what seems to be this 7 demon thing is the label that gets attached to Mary, as if she's this exceptionally lost person that has these 7 demons. But the idea of the 7 demons and the overcoming of the 7 demons, that idea was very different in 300 AD or 200 AD or the 1st century AD. The whole concept of overcoming 7 demons is not a concept of a very evil person somehow making their way back. It is a concept of a complete purification of someone's soul if they can overcome all 7 of the great demons. We say it all the time, you know, like, oh man, I'm really battling my demons here. That's what that meant, to be released from the control of the 7 demons. It doesn't mean you have 7 multiple personality demons that are, somehow, I don't know, causing you to walk around like some crazy person in a horror movie. Overcoming the 7 demons is the act of complete spiritual purification. So the early church, when they were reading about this pious follower and close companion of Jesus, they would not have identified Mary as someone exceptionally evil. They would have identified her as someone exceptionally pure. Mary doesn't get a lot of additional description throughout the Gospels. You don't hear a lot about her and what she's saying. But at the end of all of the Gospels, Mary becomes one of the most important people in the story. In all of the Gospels, she's a witness to the death of Jesus. She's at the crucifixion. She is also a witness to the empty tomb, which, if you're a Christian, this whole idea of an empty tomb is at the very heart of the faith. And there's a lot of subtle variations in the story of Easter morning and what happened at the tomb that morning. Who was there? Was the tomb open? Was it closed? Was there a gardener? Were there angels? Slight different telling of the story across all 4 Gospels, but thing that's consistent is Mary Magdalene. She is the one that is there to witness this moment, this incredibly important moment in the story of Jesus. It's Mary's moment. It's such an elevated position for a human being to be in the entire Bible. The idea that Mary Magdalene is the one that is chosen and the one that's highlighted in this story. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think we can just look at that and say, oh well, lucky her. She's the one that popped up in the story. If you have any respect for the stories, something else is going on. The way she's described in the Gospel of John, she takes on the title of the apostle to the apostles. She is the first apostle that delivers this message of resurrection to the others. So you hear a lot about the early church and the church fathers and their credibility and their power being linked to this idea of the apostolic fathers, this unbroken lineage of the church that goes back to the first leader of the church, who was Peter. But there's also an apostolic mother, and that apostolic mother is Mary Magdalene. And in the first almost 600 years of the church, there is an incredible amount of writing and discussion about Mary Magdalene and about Peter. And a lot of times this discussion focuses on some of the conflict between those two. I've talked a lot about non-canonical writing, so if we just look at some of the other early church fathers, the respected church fathers, the ones that laid the groundwork for the teaching and unification of the church. You're talking about Origen, Eusebius, Hippolytus, Jerome. Centuries of these early church fathers all looked at Mary the same way, and that was as this apostle to the apostles. There is a Gospel of Mary Magdalene. We don't have a complete copy of it, but we have fragments of it. That was an incredibly heretical book for the Church of Rome, who had placed Peter as their leader, because in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, there are teachings and conversations between Mary and Jesus, both during the life of Jesus and after the resurrection of Jesus. So those writings and all of those early accounts, it's a big part of why these books had to be left out of the canon. Peter doesn't always come off as a great guy in the Gospels. Peter's one of the most flawed people that you read about in the Gospels, and he's also identified as the rock that the church would be built on. So the church really didn't need any more bad press when it came to Peter, and he gets a lot of bad press in the Gospel of Thomas, and a lot of that is related to how he treats Mary. Gospel of Philip, same thing. How does he treat Mary? He treats her very poorly, and the other disciples have to stick up for Mary constantly. Like, how can you do this, Peter? Like, who are you to say she doesn't deserve to be heard? If the Lord considered her such a close companion, and we all know she was, why do you think you have a right to put her down or call her a liar? So, in multiple other non-canonical Gospels, that story is consistent. It is repeated. It is reinforced. Just how much Mary knew, and the church fathers all knew that. So when they spoke about Mary in these, the casting out of the 7 demons and how Jesus did that for her, they weren't talking about an exorcism of Mary, where Jesus walks in with a magical group of sayings to exorcise these 7 demons. It is the fact that she so fully embodied the teachings of Jesus, that she was able to overcome in a complete way. 7 is the number of completeness in the Bible, that she was able to fully overcome her inner demons and follow the way of Jesus. So that was the story of the 7 and the story of Mary for 560 years or so. And then the Great Mary heresy was established in the formation of this concept of the 7 deadly sins. The church and the Pope at the time decided that Mary would become the embodiment of the 7 sins, not of purity and completeness in the teachings of Jesus. That Pope, I believe it was Gregory, in 591, you can look this up, was the first to identify Mary as the sinful woman that is referenced in the New Testament. And Pope Gregory sort of starts connecting some of these dots and creating this new heretical idea, which was that Mary was the sinful woman, not the pure woman. It was a new idea, and it was heresy because of that. But that heresy just became part of orthodoxy the longer it stayed around. And now priests within the Catholic Church, pastors in Protestant churches, they've adopted this image of Mary as this prostitute. It's tragic. Can we just identify how wrong that is, and go back and spend a little time understanding who Mary was during the time of Jesus, who she was to the early church, what the greatest early church writers thought about her for centuries. They praised her purity and her commitment to her apostolic mission, and the sacrifices she made to continue the message of Jesus after his death. Unfortunately, modern Christianity has deleted all of that and has decided she's a repentant prostitute. And that's all you need to know. I think you should know more about Mary. There's a lot to learn from her as a disciple, as an apostle. She is the mother of all of the Jesus believers, all of the women that continued to carry that message forward. She was the great example, and she would have meant more to the Christian movement in the early church than possibly anyone else. Peter was important, Paul was important, John, James, everyone had their role, but Mary really stood out. And you have to believe half of the people hearing this message, this new story, the story of the Messiah and the Savior, half of them were females, and they had an incredible example to look up to in Mary. And I think it's okay if we start looking at her that way again. Some powerful Marys in the Bible. We respect Mary, the mother of Jesus, in a way that I don't think anybody would be okay if you started talking bad about Mary, the mother of Jesus. But Mary Magdalene was the Mary that took this idea of the Great Commission and took up the responsibility of spreading that message. And she did it as a fully purified believer in the teachings of Jesus, who had overcome all of her demons and had reached a Christ-like state. So the Mary heresy is what happened in 591. I think we can revisit that, and I think it's okay to say now that popes are not infallible. Mistakes were made, so we can go back and reassess. So I encourage you to do that. Look into Mary Magdalene. She's wonderful, amazing, complete, purified. Her stories are great.